it's Carrie here, and I am so excited right now because I am joined by my amazing friend, Stu McLaren. Stu, thank you so much for joining me.
Carrie, thank you for having me, buddy. It's good to be here with you.
I know, it's really great to chat, and I'm really excited about this conversation because obviously I am a huge fan and advocate of membership sites, given that I have one, and it has been probably the best business decision I've ever made to start a membership site. And I talk a lot about the power of membership sites and the power of having recurring revenue. And I have seen firsthand myself the impact it can have on your business and life, and also seen it from like so many other people around me who've created membership sites. But I think one of the biggest holdups people have about starting a membership site is the fear that A, they need a humongous audience in order to make it successful, and B, that they are going to be overwhelmed with having to create so much content, and they're not going to be able to keep up with it. And I think those two things really put people off. Yeah. So I really wanted to get on here with you and chat with you about this, because I don't necessarily think that those two thoughts are true. And I know that people can create huge success, and it can be simple. And I know that you've seen this because obviously, I forget for everyone, I forgot to say, but Stu is the creator of this amazing course called Tribe, which teaches people how to build successful membership sites. And it was 2015, Stu, actually, back in 2015, I connected with Stu and I worked with him to help with my membership site. And in that year, I tripled the membership, which was just phenomenal. It was like, my mind was blown by the strategies you were sharing with me. So when it comes to membership site stuff, Stu is definitely the go-to person on it. So I thought you'd be the best person to come on and talk about this, especially in this time with everything going on.
And it's fun too to kind of remember back, because when you and I first connected, you were so cute because you're like, I've launched this membership and I don't really know what I'm doing, but I've gotten it to 1,000 members. Can you help? And it was I think the thing that I want people to realize is that many times when you're launching, a membership site, it's not like a we got all these books behind me. It's not like a book where, it's a final product. And, if you find a mistake in the book afterwards, you can't go to all the bookstores and take all the books off the shelves and change it, right? Well, with a membership site, it's totally different. It's like a living, breathing organism. It changes all the time based around what you're learning with your members. And so I just, acknowledge you, Carrie, because you just got it going and you figured it out. And this is the most important part for everybody. And you touched on a couple things. One, you said, well, do you have to have a big audience in order to make this happen? And this is a huge misunderstanding that people have, because there's actually a unique advantage when you have a smaller audience. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute, but I want to give people some insight. You don't need tens of thousands. You don't even need thousands. You just need a few hundred people to be able to successfully launch a membership and create a ton of momentum and revenue for the business. Case in point, there's a great story of Wendy Batten in our community. Now, she serves a very specific niche, right? So she serves paint store retailers. These are retail shops that sell paint. I mean, you can't get any more niche than that. So she didn't have a big audience of tens of thousands or thousands. She had an audience of 354 people. But she decided she was going to move forward and launch her membership, and she did. And so her founding member launch, she welcomed 52 members, generating $2,800 a month in month number one. And now she's grown that to, a couple hundred members. But my point is that she didn't have a huge audience of tens of thousands or thousands. She had 354 people. And there are so many great stories like this where people are launching with tiny audiences. I think of, what's her name? It's at the tip of my tongue. It'll come to me. But I do remember her membership site, which was she was teaching women how to do kettlebell workouts. And she didn't have a big audience either. She actually went out to a small audience of just over 250 people and ended up welcoming over 50 plus members into her membership. But there are so many other stories like this. And I think the point of the matter is that you don't need massive audiences. And we see this time and time again where people do a very simple founding member launch. And we can kind of unpack that if you want. But the thing that I want people to realize is the advantage that you have with a smaller audience is that you can create a more intimate relationship with that audience that somebody who has a big audience can't do at scale. But when you have a smaller audience, you can, number one, you can create a more personal connection. You can send personal messages. You can follow up in a personal way. And that leads to way higher conversion rates. You know, I was telling you before we got started, there's this great story of Eugenia Oganova, who she was coming off, she had a course that she had been taking people through. So she had just over 100 people who were going through this course, small audience. And she wanted to launch a membership site on the back end of that. And so again, she didn't have tens of thousands that she was marketing this to. It was a small group of just over 100 people. And she ended up welcoming 47 members at $97 into that membership. So look at that conversion rate. Like, wow. That's a 47% conversion rate. You know, that's unheard of. Like if you go to somebody who's got a big audience and their conversion rates are nowhere near that. Yeah. And so that's my point, is that like when you have a smaller audience, you got to use that to your advantage. And there's a huge opportunity there to build that more intimate relationship, which leads to way higher conversion rates.
That is so interesting and so true. Like if I could reach out to like my entire audience and have conversations with them, it would convert a lot better. But you can't when it's a bigger audience. And you're right, it is really a powerful thing when you have a small audience that I guess a lot of people overlook because they're just trying to get a bigger and bigger audience. So it's really interesting and really inspiring that people who do have like an audience or an email list of a few hundred people can actually get a membership off the ground and get enough people in it to make it sustainable so they can keep going and then keep growing it. I think it'd be interesting to get into that founding launch that you're talking about a little bit, but I think it's also interesting because people seem a little bit frightened or apprehensive as to like the amount of work that goes into membership sites and that it's going to be really overwhelming. And I suppose, for example, if you looked at my membership, the Members Club, you might be like, bloody hell, because obviously it's been going for such a long time. There's a lot of content and there's a lot of stuff happening. And I suppose if I looked at that now and it wasn't me and I was looking at it as an outsider starting, I might be like, how would I even do this? But people feel overwhelmed and like it's a content treadmill that you can't ever get off. Like, what are some of your tips around like how to actually keep membership sites simple?
Well, what's interesting is that, you're absolutely right. Like if somebody would come into your membership now, I mean, they'd see, almost 6 years worth of content. Like people have got to, keep that in mind. Like that's 6 years worth of content in there. And that would be completely unfair to compare a brand new membership to one that has been operating for 6+ years, right? But here's the truth of the matter behind all of this as well. Now more than ever, people are not buying information. We think they are. We think they are, but they're not. What they're buying is they're buying progress, and they want to be able to make that progress in the most simple way possible. Because the reality of it is that people don't want to have to sift and sort through tons of information to find the few things that are going to be relevant for them. Like, case in point, during the whole, quarantine, you've got millions of parents who are at home with their kids. I'm raising my hand because I got 2 young ones. They literally were coming in here saying hi to you, Carrie, before we got started. And so now you got millions of parents who are thrust into becoming teachers. And none of us have experience being teachers. So we're kind of like, okay, what do we do? And, I've seen so many comments of people saying, yeah, but there's tons of free resources out there. Yeah, maybe. But no parent wants to spend a whole half a day trying to sift and sort through all that stuff to figure out what am I going to teach my kids. They would just much rather have it handed to them on a silver platter and made super simple, which is why like Anna DiGilio, who has a membership site providing lesson plans for teachers, has made a slight pivot and is launching a membership site for parents. It's why Casey Hope, who started a calligraphy membership site for kids in amidst all of this chaos, has already welcomed over 200 plus members, new members to that new membership, because parents just want the activities. They just want to be told what to do. And so it's about keeping it as simple as possible. And the reality of it is that I have a lot of experience working literally with tens of thousands of membership site owners, because before we launched Tribe and have been teaching thousands of entrepreneurs every year about how to launch memberships, I had a software company. And this is actually how, you and I initially connected. Was I had a software company called Wishlist Member. And so I literally worked behind the scenes with tens of thousands of business owners who were running membership sites. And across all the different markets, here's what I can tell you. The number one reason that people leave a membership site is overwhelm. Meaning they get overwhelmed by the content. So they get in and they're like a deer in headlights and they're like, oh my gosh, like how am I gonna use this? And then as soon as that seed of overwhelm is planted, now it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not using it. It's a waste of money. I'm out. And so what we want to do is the opposite of that. We want to make a membership simple so that people are making progress. Because again, in all my years, in all these different markets, I've never heard of somebody canceling a membership site because they're making too much progress. Like I've never heard somebody say, yeah, you know what, I'm experiencing too much success, so I'm out. No, they don't say that. So all we have to do is keep it very simple for people so that they continuously make progress. And baby steps are just as important as the big leaps, but it's about simplifying the content and reducing the volume and keeping it focused on helping people implement and make progress.
So true. So what are some of the biggest ways that people can do that? Because obviously there's, different things like doing like a training or a live call or, communities. Like what are some of the simplest strategies that you've seen work really well for people that are the least overwhelming?
Well, in general, my simple stew rule of thumb as it relates to membership content is that, again, there are different types of memberships. So I want to preface that. There are different types of membership sites, and it's important to understand what type of membership site that you are looking to roll out. But most that are, I would say, information or knowledge-based memberships generally follow what we call the publisher model, where you are publishing fresh new content on a regular basis. And again, people think, okay, oh yes, but that's going to create like this huge, content treadmill. And here's what I usually say to that is that, well, it really depends on how you structure your content, because again, people don't want a ton of volume of content. What they want is just actionable things that they can implement to make progress. And so, for example, like when I was business partners with Michael Hyatt and I was leading the strategy with him on his Platform University membership, we would create almost a whole year's worth of content in about 6 days. And the way that we would do that is that we would schedule 3 two-day video shoots. And those video shoots, they were jam-packed. We were just like back to back to back to back to back. And we were filming a whole bunch of content. But in that, once we were done, we would schedule it for 4 months, 5 months at a time. And so we were able to get way ahead, and we were able to produce a whole year's worth of content in 6 days. And so you can break this down. And my general rule of thumb is that you don't want more than an hour of learning time per week. If you exceed that 1 hour of learning time per week, you're really starting to ask a lot of people, because it's not just the learning time, it's the time to also implement what it is that you are teaching them. And we actually love to tilt the scales more in the implementation time than we do in the learning time. So as an example, when we were running Michael Hyatt's membership, we had essentially 4 deliverables, 1 per week. We would do a master class. This was typically the longest portion that we would deliver, anywhere between 35 to 45 minutes long. And it was typically an interview either with Michael and an expert, or with me interviewing Michael as the expert. And it would go deep on one particular focus. Then we would have another deliverable, which would be like a Plat U. We called it a Plat U how-to. And this was more of like an article, like 1,000 to 1,500 word article that was very specific about a step-by-step thing to do, an action step that they could do. Like an example would be, how to create more engagement in your comments from a blog post? And so there were very specific steps that somebody would do and things that they would include in a blog post to evoke more engagement in their comments, or how to record a specific podcast, or record a podcast. And so it'd be a tutorial with lots of screenshots and lots of step-by-steps showing people how to do something. So 1, masterclass; 2, Plat U how-to. We would also do what we called member makeovers. So again, this was like looking at somebody's website or their social media channels and so forth, and giving very specific feedback in terms of things to tweak and things to change. We would also do a live Q&A. So that was like the 4th deliverable. And then we would also have another deliverable, which I loved, which was a more behind the scenes. We called these the backstage pass. And these were like short, like 10, 15-minute videos. So again, not long videos, right? 10 to 15 minutes, but it would show behind the scenes of like what Michael was doing to grow his business. And an example of this, which was like, just kind of shows how, specific it was. One of the most popular backstage passes was Michael showing how he packed his suitcase before he left for a speaking engagement. And people were just enthralled. They're like, they're watching him pack his suit so that it doesn't get wrinkled, and how he folds everything and all this kind of stuff. And then his suitcase, and admittedly, like even after I saw it, I was like, Carrie, I ended up buying the same suitcase that he was using. It's like, but like it kept it super simple, 10 to 15 minutes. So you can see here in terms of the deliverables, it's not a huge volume of content, and it allows you as the creator to batch produce a whole bunch of it together to be able to schedule accordingly. So the reality of it is that people, it's not about the volume, it's about supporting people in implementing. And that's why people stay, because when they implement, they make progress. When they make progress, they stay.
Yeah, so true. And like, I think nowadays there's so many amazing tools that we can all tap into that enable us to create that connection for implementation. Like we do the hot seat calls, and we have like our experts every month. So I mean, we did one with like Amy Porterfield, and she came on, and people could apply to be in the hot seat. And then we had, I think, 8 people in the hot seat, and they were all there as panelists on a Zoom call. And then we brought them in one by one, and they got 5 minutes with Amy. And it was the most phenomenal session. And then we also have like the virtual networking sessions where people would go, again, we use Zoom, and we come together and we go into breakout groups of like 5 to 10 people, where we then facilitate conversations and everyone gets to chat and introduce themselves and support one another. And that doesn't take anything from me, because that's me facilitating the connections, and that is so powerful. And I think with those kinds of tools, and even like Facebook Lives, like every week, it's right here actually, we do we just started this actually recently, but it's we call it like question jar with Carrie, and literally people ask questions, and then every week when I get them, I cut up the paper and put them into the question jar and pull out questions on this session. And it's interesting because sometimes the questions are really personal questions, because people like literally like ask me anything, like you can ask me whatever you want. And but now that the fact that we get to utilize those tools makes it so much easier for us to be able to show up and serve our audience and deliver in a simple way. Like,
yeah.
So
and what I love about what you're doing too, Carrie, is that the focus isn't just on learning more. It's about like, how do we take what has already been provided and implement and support each other in the implementation of it. And I think this is the shift that I want to encourage everybody to really make when they're thinking about the membership, is that it's not just about the information. It's about supporting people in implementing that information. And the more we focus on implementation and showing up and serving and supporting, the more progress people are going to make, and therefore the more successful the site will be. So this is not about getting on a content treadmill. Listen, nobody wants to create a membership that's going to become a daunting job. Like, that sucks. That is not why we get into this.
Yeah.
It is about supporting people and helping them make progress. And when you shift your mindset around it, then you begin to see like, okay, the content can actually be a lot more simple than I had envisioned. And it's going to, your people are going to experience more success. But it's counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive to think the less I provide, the more value I create. Like that is completely counterintuitive, right?
Yeah, completely. I feel like less is more.
Yes.
Less is so much more, because then people actually get results because it's doable. It's like, I remember someone once saying to me, would you rather me give you like a 130 page ebook showing you how to do X, Y, Z, or do you want me to write it down on a piece of paper, like one single piece? I can scribble it down the plan for you. Give it to me on a piece of paper, thanks. I don't want 130 pages to read.
That's exactly it. Like, and we see this happening. Like, and I don't know if you guys have it in the UK, but over here in North America, we have what are called Coles notes. Do you guys have those?
No.
They're basically like, when I was growing up in school, they would take like stories that we were supposed to read, right? Like, or even like Shakespeare's plays and stuff like that. And then they'd condense them. So instead of like 300 pages, it would be like 50 pages. And I used to love those because it was just like, okay, skip all the fluff. Just tell me like the essence of what I need to know. And that's exactly it. Like, people just don't want to spend a whole bunch of time going through a whole bunch of stuff. If they can get what would have been, like you said, in 150 pages down into like a 2-page report, yes, give me that 2-page summary.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the reason why memberships who have, load people up, it's going to lead to more cancellations because of the overwhelm. When you keep it simple and you just focus on helping people make progress, that's where the magic is. Now, the other thing that I will say about this is that it will create some uncomfortableness, not only for you as a content creator, because the natural instinct is, okay, the more I create, the more value I deliver. That's natural to think that way. But the other side of it is that it actually forces people to do stuff, because, people can very easily procrastinate in just learning mode, and never actually doing anything. But when you stop that addiction and you say, okay, learning's done, now we implement. And now it's kind of like it shifts it for your members as to like, well, this is a different experience. And it's uncomfortable for them at first. But then when they start experiencing the momentum of actually doing and actually getting results, that's when they become almost evangelical fans of you and your membership, because they're making progress.
Yeah, so true. So true. I could sit here and talk to you all day about membership sites, but I think that it's really inspiring and good to hear that you really can build a membership site with a small audience, and you can create a membership site and keep it simple. And there's so many different ideas that we've talked about that hopefully have sparked lots of inspiration for everyone listening. And Stu also has an amazing free series. You have to go and take advantage of it, because if you are interested in learning more about building a successful membership site, launching a successful membership site, it is absolutely not to be missed. So obviously that is coming up. We'll leave the links around for that. Do you want to just give people a bit of an overview as to like what they can expect from that?
Yeah, well, the first part, and I'm teaching all of this series live, by the way. And if you can't make it live, no problem. By the way, we have done it at times that are, suitable for people in the UK, for people all around the world. So, but if you can't make it, it's going to be, the recordings will be provided. But I encourage you to come live, because one of the things in the first part is that I'm going to be talking about the different types of membership sites and which one is going to be right for you based on the market you serve. Because as I was saying, like, there are different types of memberships, and it's important to know, is a membership a good fit for my market? We'll talk about that. And then B, what kind of membership model would be most appropriate for the kind of membership that you want to create and to serve your people? So that's what we're going to talk about in the first part. The second part is where we're going to unpack this whole content thing. Like, what do you actually provide in the membership to make sure that your members not only make progress, but that they stay and that they love you and they fall in love with you, want to share it with you with a whole bunch of other people. We're going to talk about like what to specifically provide in the membership. And what I will tell you is that there's one element that if you don't have it, your members will sputter. But if you do have it, your members will thrive. And I'm going to break that down for you in the second part. And then in the third part, this is where we kind of zoom up and we talk about like, what are the 5 key elements of a membership, starting with your foundation strategy, your content strategy, your marketing strategy, your retention strategy, and your growth strategy. And I'm going to give you a PDF blueprint to follow along. And it's super meaty. It goes into detail of all of these things. But during the live, I'm going to be teaching through those 5 elements, and I'm going to be breaking it all down for you. So I'm super excited because along the way, I'm going to share tons of stories. Like we talked about, people who didn't have big audiences. I didn't mention today stories of like Anna Saucier, who she serves, infertility practitioners. Didn't have a massive audience, 326 people. So again, not tens of thousands or thousands, just a few hundred. But when she did a founding member launch of her membership, which by the way, was sparked from a single Facebook post, she ended up generating $5,024 in the first day of opening that cart. Wow. And so I'm sharing these stories all the time of people like Wendy, people like Anna, people like Tasha Cochran, who did the same thing. She followed a founding member launch and kept it super simple. She didn't even have the membership site created yet, but what she did was she used the founding member launch and she cast the vision of what it was to become. She sent it out to a small audience of just over 300 people herself, generated over $6,000 in the first 24 hours of that membership. Wow. And we share stories like this over and over again to show you examples of how people are doing it in different markets and in different ways with different types of memberships. So I highly recommend come and join us because it is a once a year experience that we deliver. And I'm passionate about this stuff more so now than ever before because I'm seeing in our communities how memberships are safeguarding people's businesses. And in many cases, people are thriving during this time because when we're all quarantined, we want to be productive. I was just sharing with you, Carrie, before we jumped on, like I just got some stats from a recent research study. And it said this was from 2,000 respondents, okay, who had been quarantined during this whole thing. And 80% of the respondents were determined to find some silver linings in this. 69% said they wanted to leave the quarantine with a new skill, and 57% are looking forward to partaking in activities that they would never normally have time for. And I'm sharing this with you because the research validates what we're seeing with people like Levi Kajula with his guitar membership, tripling sales right now. Wow. Or Emily Jeffords, who just relaunched her membership for artists, welcomed 367 new members. Or Tamara Bennett, who just finished her launch for her decorative door hanging membership, welcomed 420 members. Like, it's crazy what is happening right now. It is an amazing time for people who have an expertise, who want to teach something and share it with others. And so I highly recommend you come and join us. We'll show you how to do it with a membership.
Yes, I would second that. Definitely don't miss out on it because like you said, it's a once a year thing and it's so good. And I obviously believe in everything that you do, Stu, and have first-hand experience of how amazing what you teach actually is because it's had such a huge impact for me. And I am only sharing this information because of how much it's impacted my life and my business and the success it's created for me. And I know I started clueless, no idea what I was doing. So to know that I've gone from that to where it's at now blows my mind, and I know what's possible for everyone else. And like you said, those stories that you share are so inspiring because it makes us all realize what is actually possible and what we can actually all accomplish. So yeah, I'm really excited. But thank you so much for coming and sharing those tips and for chatting with us all about all of memberships and your knowledge. And yeah, like I said, definitely sign up for Stu's free series. It's definitely worth watching. But anyway, thank you so much, Stu. It's been amazing chatting with you. And thank you all so much for watching or listening. And I will see you all next week.